Good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. on a Monday, right? Yeah, today's Monday. Start of the work week. I know some people went back to work today too. Things are starting to open back up, but we're live on Facebook. I'm Rob from Echo Properties, and we are live with another local business in our community. We've been doing this now for the past, feels like forever, but I think it's been about 3.5 to 4 weeks, highlighting local businesses, the fabric of our community, the people that live here, that work here, that shop here, that sleep here, their kids go to school here. These are the businesses that we need to support. We need to support local. We're local ourselves. We're a local company. And we got an interesting interviewee today, and it's I'm going to send it right now out to Jeff Lichtenstein, owner, CEO, president, the main kahuna of Echo Properties, and Mr. Adam Gumson from the Jupiter Law Center. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you just take it away because you got all the good questions today.
Yeah, so Adam's awesome. And the thing, if you've never been to Jupiter Law Center and you enter Adam's office, it's not a stiff law office. You can see behind Adam right now, it says, "I totally agree with myself." And the whole office is like that. It makes you laugh when you come in, and that's the vibe. I mean, it's when it's time to get down to business, Adam and his lawyers put their hat on, but they're genuine, warm, and honest, and it's not something that you always that you typically find at all. It's a different feel. Adam is back in his office. He's been joking that he just purchased this 8,000 square foot facility, and he said, "I could have just taken my fold out Costco table and my trellis behind me." So tell us what's going on in the law world, right now.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, yeah, we did a will execution this morning between the thunderstorms. So we have a trellis adjacent to our office, and we put a little table out there. There's two benches about 15 or 20 feet apart. And it's been a really good makeshift office over the last month or two because people want to still sign documents but don't want to come to the office. And so we have made that like dining al fresco. We're doing meetings outside and document signings outside, and that's been.
Do you still have to sign with a blue pen?
Still have to sign with a blue pen, but we give clients a blue pen, so we're not touching each other's pens. But yeah, blue pen only, please. Yeah. Shows that it's an original. Yeah.
So what is this? What kind of business are you doing right now? Like what are you finding people are interested in doing?
Well, I think there are a lot of people, because of the slowdown, people are home, they're thinking about their to-do lists. And for me, in my business, estate planning is always one of those to-do list things that when clients first come to see me, they always say, "We needed to do this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And we've never either done one or we've never updated it since the kids were small." So there are a lot of clients over the last couple of weeks, months, who are getting to that to-do list item. Things like trusts, wills, powers of attorney, healthcare surrogates. There are clients whose kids are in college who are now home with them. And we've had discussions about making sure that their college-age kids have powers of attorney, healthcare surrogates, living wills, because the parents aren't automatically able to access information if their kids don't have these documents, which most people don't think about.
What types of things when you're planning should you be thinking about?
Well, I think let's take the kids first. If you've got college-age kids, I can't tell you how many times someone has called me and said, "My son or daughter is in the hospital, and I called the hospital to find out how they're doing, and the hospital wouldn't give me any information because there's something called HIPAA. That's a federal privacy law that prevents you from contacting someone else's doctors or getting access to their records." So for anybody who has young adult children and you still think that they're dependent upon you, they may be dependent financially, but in the eyes of the law, they are adults. And so we've done a number of powers of attorney and healthcare surrogates for clients of ours who have adult children who never really have the opportunity to have their kids home long enough to sign documents. They usually come home for a weekend. So they come home Friday night, they leave Sunday night. So that's been one thing that we've done for a number of our clients relating to just their young adult children. Same thing with their parents. You've got elderly people who maybe did documents 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, and then have never done anything again. And now the kids are having a little bit more opportunity to speak to their parents about what is in place. And there's no reason for their parents to have to go through a guardianship if they had just done powers of attorney and healthcare surrogates, allowing their child or somebody else to make decisions for them.
How much more volume right now are you doing? Are you doing double right now of wills and things like that? Because it's on people's minds.
It's come in ebbs and flows. The first couple of weeks, I think there was a big push for estate planning, and then it slowly got quieter as I think it became much more serious and people didn't want to go out at all, and everything was very, very quiet. Now I think there's sort of a renewed hope that as things open up, there'll be an opportunity. And we've just been telling clients, look, you don't have to come into our office. And so everyone's been very, I think, relieved to know that there's another option. And the trellis that we joked about has really been a great thing, because I can sit with clients 20 feet away without jeopardizing safety. We can have a discussion and they can come back in when the documents are done and sign them fairly safely. We'll wear masks, and clients have come with masks and gloves to sign documents. So now it's starting to, I think, become more of a reality that things are going to open up and people want to get back out again.
What makes a good will?
Well, I think it has to be clear. I think it has to be very definitive of who you want to name as a beneficiary, who you want to name as a personal representative. That's the person who's in charge of your estate. In the old days, we used to call it executor or executrix, depending on man or woman. Florida is politically correct. We call it personal representative, whether it's a man or a woman. And that person is in charge of making sure that your assets are sold, creditors are paid, and everything's liquidated to be able to pay your beneficiaries. So sometimes clients will come in with an idea of who they want to name as their personal representative. And a lot of clients feel it has to be their oldest child because they don't want to ruffle feathers. And a lot of what I do is not just in the document preparation side. It's having the discussions with clients and walking them through their decision-making process. Oftentimes they come in with a list of here's who we want to be in charge and here's who we want to be beneficiaries. And they leave with that list slightly altered because of a discussion. And I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care who they name. But oftentimes I hear what they're saying and they're feeling like they have to name this person. And I tell them they don't. And there's this relief like, oh, okay, there's another option. So a good will has who your beneficiaries are. It also has contingencies, which I find a lot of the pre-printed forms that you get on the internet or through some of the other services, LegalZoom, you don't have alternatives. So someone lists their 3 kids as beneficiaries and say, okay, they're the beneficiaries. And it doesn't say what happens when one of the kids dies. Does that share go to his or her kids, grandchildren? Does it just go to the surviving 2 children? Does the gift lapse and then everything's just divided by 2 instead of 3? There's a lot of problems with the pre-printed forms because there's no one there on the other side to ask questions and ask the clients. And a lot of times in my initial intake meetings, the clients will say like, oh, no one ever asked us that, or, oh, we never thought about that. And that's part of my job, is to open their eyes and ask those questions so that they can make a will that is detailed.
Well, there's probably things that happen too. We all think we're invincible, and people later on, get dementia or different things happen, and they have to probably think through a lot of different scenarios of who's taking care of them and what happens in different scenarios.
Yeah, I think look, as we get older, we get a little greater sense of our mortality, and the COVID situation I think hits home with a lot of people, and it can happen. And most of the clients who sit in my office, are embarrassed that they haven't done the planning sooner, but at least they're getting to it. So there's someone in the hospital who's 20, who's 30, who's 40, who's 50, and all the way up to, 100 years old. It's certainly more likely that an older person dies than a younger person, just general statistics, but that doesn't mean it happens in every case. And so I think people have to be prepared. And I think this to me is no different than people who have auto insurance or health insurance or life insurance. You don't buy insurance because you want to get in a car accident or die. You have it to protect your family. This kind of planning is similar. You do it so that things are more straightforward and the transition to moving your nest egg to your family is cleaner and doesn't involve court.
Can you talk a little bit about, because it is related to real estate, with how probate works in Florida and what some of the things to make things go smooth in that arena?
Sure. So, you handle a lot of closings. When you go to a closing, who's there? The seller, the buyer, the title agent, maybe you guys as realtors, brokers, maybe there's a mortgage person, maybe there's some other person who's waiting to pick up a check, like a surveyor. The problem is if the seller's chair is empty, if across the closing table from the buyer, the seller's chair is empty, the title company cannot give good and marketable title to a buyer. So if you have a deceased seller and you just put the house up for sale and you go through the process, if you got all the way to the closing table, which doesn't happen because the title agent figures it out eventually, but if there's an empty chair at the closing table, then there's no one to sign the papers on behalf of the seller. And so probate process is simply the procedure to name someone to be in charge of the estate so that the estate can sell the property legally and the buyer can get good and marketable title. We all know someone who has a child or two or three. And without the will that says who's in charge of the property and the probate when the mother or father dies, how does the title company know who's legally entitled to sign the papers? So for you all, as active as you are in the real estate world, you're always going to find a situation where grandma owned the house and died, and now the kids are hot to trot to sell the house. Either they don't have enough money to carry it, they want to sell it quickly, and then they find out somewhere in the middle of the closing process that they need to appoint someone to be in charge of the estate. That's a big, stop sign in front of your closing. So the sooner you know that there's a probate situation out there with a deceased seller, and the quicker you start the probate process to name someone, the quicker you're going to be able to close.
Are some of these things getting taken care of faster now? In terms of, is your world in law, are there more things that are virtual where you can do things and you don't have to go to the court in person, whether it's probate or other things?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, we handle probates all throughout Florida because most courts have e-filing. E-filing is the process of filing PDFs in court instead of the usual mailing it to the courthouse to the clerk. So we have found in many other jurisdictions, we would send a court order to the court in a foreign jurisdiction and get an order back that afternoon, signed order. Whereas our local Palm Beach Gardens court, we would have to schedule a hearing 2-3 weeks out and wait for the hearing to be able to go in person. Now we're e-filing it with our local courts. And because the courts are closed, we are getting orders back even quicker than we would if we had hand walked it through. So it's a huge time savings for us and for the client. Typically, if I went to Palm Beach Gardens courthouse, it takes me 15-20 minutes to drive, get into the courthouse, get through the metal detector, get to the courtroom. You wait for an hour for the judge to call your case. You drive back to your office. It's probably 2 hours. Now we're not doing that. So clients don't get billed for that time. I'm happy to save the time and come up with a court order quicker and give it to the title agent quicker. I think in many ways, COVID has pushed us to a new technology front that we were on our way to, not just us as a firm, but all of us. And now we think we're there quicker. And it probably, portions of it will stay.
Well, in terms of how you guys interact together, as lawyers within your own group, how's been working from, how different people working from home, and has that been pretty synergistic? Do you think any of that's going to stay?
I think a lot of it will stay not only in our firm, but in society. I think that for me personally, we have staff of 10. And so I come in and there's only one assistant here now and everyone else is working remotely. So when I come in, I'm coming in a little later, I'm leaving a little earlier. I'm not as inundated with questions from staff as maybe typically I would be. So I've been a lot more productive. I think everyone at home is not distracted with the things that happen in offices. And I can see that there may be some people in my firm and others who would be more productive just being on their own and without the distraction. And I think a lot of it will stay throughout our firm and other firms and other industries where they've realized they're more productive for certain periods of time without the interaction.
I think we'll see some movement to Florida for that reason, because of our tax situation, weather, and the ability to, where people have thought about it. But I was talking to a friend from Chicago, and he was in the media business there, and they've got everybody working from home. And I asked him, could somebody literally work in Florida and do your job there? And he said, there's actually no reason not to. So I think we'll see a lot of different movements in here. What other COVID types of things have come up that have that out of the blue that you either expected or didn't expect?
Well, I didn't expect to see as many divorces over the last month or two coming to the office. I thought that would sort of slow down and maybe beef up after everyone went back. But what's been funny, not ha funny, but in a humorous sort of way, is I've had a number of women who have been separated for 10 to 20 years from their spouses, who never got divorced and probably wouldn't have gotten divorced, just lived separately for the rest of their lives, but they've retained me to sort of clean up some loose ends. And I think it's sort of a function of people just assessing where they are in life and wanting things to be in order. So we've had a number of new divorces that are very amicable, that the spouses in other states, we send paperwork, they sign it, and we can have a very clean and uncontested divorce. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that some of those would be long-term separated people who just really wanted to clean things up. And, they go their separate ways. Husband keeps his stuff, wife keeps her stuff, and they're just getting divorced and there's no friction. They're just basically tying up that loose end.
Why is that motivation there, you think? Just from a human standpoint?
I think people are just taking stock of where they are in life and realizing, I'm in a business where people sort of put it off until they kind of can't put it off any longer. Most of the people who come to see me, if they're not proactive people, are people who say, my next door neighbor had a heart attack, or someone got in a car accident and realized I don't have the right planning. So they're tying up those loose ends typically when they come to see me. I think what COVID has done is make people, we all have a little bit more time on our hands now than we did before. So we're able, I think, to take a step back. I think one of the nice things about it for me and probably for others is you can breathe a little bit. You can reflect. Technology is such that you can text contracts and text things. I need to know in 10 minutes. I need to know the answer to this. So what COVID has done is give you a chance to reflect. And I think people want to clean up some loose ends that maybe they would not have before, but now they realize it's important.
My wife is Veronica's a mental health therapist. And
Right.
She's actually, she's told me, we were talking about this the other night, her clients have done pretty well through the whole thing. Because I think they were in therapy to start with, and they're so they're managing whether it's anxiety or knowing how to deal with things. But a lot of them, where they're having issues, have been because they have to address certain situations, and they're together. They're working some things out too. So I think it kind of maybe goes both ways, where because you're in a forced thing, and if you've got to address something rather than hide from it, you've got to talk with your spouse.
Yeah, look, I don't see the cases where the spouses work things out. They reconcile, that's great, but they don't come to my office for legal advice. So I only see the ones that don't work it out. But I think you're right. There's some who are going to reconcile and realize that their problems are not so insurmountable. And there are others who realize that they've been putting a Band-Aid on the relationship for a long time. And the closeness, especially if they've got young kids in the house, or kids who are back from college, the closeness is bringing to light that it's just not a match anymore. But probably the people who are seeing Veronica are a little bit more emotionally invested and have thought about it more. So, they're probably on one side or the other. They know which way to go.
How you I know you do a lot of volunteering. You teach a course. I think you said at Jupiter High. I remember you told me a long time ago, and you coach basketball. How are those things going?
Well, they're not really in season for me now, so I haven't been affected. My class, I've taught a class called Law for the Layman, Everyday Information You Should Know at Jupiter High School for 25 plus years. And it's a series of just lectures on different topics with lots of questions and answers. So I finished in late February, early March, unrelated to COVID. It was just my time for the class was over. And I don't start another one until October. So I don't think I'm going to be very affected class-wise by COVID. My basketball is through JTAA. So that also ended the end of February. Lily won a championship, by the way. So that was fun. So I coached my son and my daughter. That was Lily's last year in JTA. So she went out with a bang. But I don't start again that until like November. So this is like my time of the year where it was a big breath, and I think I've joked with you before off air, January and February are really, really busy for me because of the class and because I coach both teams. And so I'm running at nights and just like a chicken with my head cut off. And so I said, I really just need a month or two where the world just slows down, and stops and lets me catch up. I felt like I've caused this whole, pandemic because I just needed a month or two to catch up.
Yeah, I don't know how Rob, he's an amazing coach. He coached Jade when she played basketball for the first time. And he's got the whole play. He's drawing plays up for these girls and stuff. And his mind's going up, but he's able to explain it to them. And they learn a lot in terms of strategy. So I was like, wow, that's really, where I met you the first time.
Yeah, that's how we met. And I take Jade, 10 times out of 10. She's a hustler and I could teach her, somebody who comes in thinking they already know everything, not a good fit. But Jade could be molded. I wish I had her more than that 1 year.
Did how did you decide to get into law? What do you love about it?
It's very rewarding to help people with a problem that they've had on their desk in their life, and then they just know what to do with it. So, I've done a variety of things in my career. I was a commercial litigator. I did a lot of personal injury. I did bankruptcy. It really wasn't until maybe 15 plus years ago that I decided I did some seminar work where one of the speakers said to me, "What do you like to do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, if you could choose the things you like to do. And it was enlightening. It's almost embarrassing. Because anytime I used to get a call from someone, I always thought that I had to take their call and do the work for them, even if it was an area I didn't like. So I wasn't a big criminal law fan, but I handled criminal law. And the seminar instructor said, "Why don't you refer the things out of the office that you don't want to do or don't like and keep the things that you like to do," which is what I started to do probably mid-2000s after my first daughter was born. And we had a lot of medical problems with her. And I really needed to sort of streamline and make sure that the time I spent was quality time in the office as opposed to being spread too thin. And estate planning is one of the areas that gives me a lot of satisfaction because most of the people who I see at the end of the execution of the documents, they'll hug me and say thank you because it was something that bothered them. And you don't see that with a lot of areas of law. I do a lot of divorce work, and I think I do a good job with that, but no one's doing cartwheels when they get divorced. They're not incredibly happy. It's a bad time of their life. So even if it's a successful result for them, they don't have the same feeling of happiness that they might be with something else. Real estate is always something that we handle because when we handle estate planning and probate, there's always a house to be sold. When we handle divorce, there's usually a house to be sold. So real estate sort of fits with those two other areas in that we're always involved in some real estate deal. And I think the reward of solving someone's problem, and like you said when we started, there are a lot of attorneys who are not very popular. Being an attorney doesn't get you invited to a lot of parties because there's so many negatives associated with it. So I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy the people I meet, and it's nice to have a practice where most of the people that we deal with are people that we like and like to see. Not all of them, but that's what my goal is, to have a practice that everyone that we see is someone who we'd like to spend time with. If we had a beer with someone, we would say, hey, I'd like to have a beer with that person.
Hey, Rob, you have any questions, for Adam?
I don't think so. I saw that my biggest fan, my mother, was watching, and she made a comment that she dealt with a lot of issues when my grandmother had passed away, power of attorney and her estate, and she didn't get things set up ahead of time. It was kind of all last minute, and it was a hard time. I remember during that time was hard for her. Stress of the family, brothers arguing, people arguing about different things, who gets this, who gets that, what they do here. It's supposed to be a time when you're coming together, but a lot of times it feels like it's a very stressful time in people's lives if they don't have it properly set up ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true, that when it's set up in advance, it's sort of done, and it minimizes the potential problems people have. It minimizes costs. Grandma, whether it's yours, Rob, or someone else's, why does grandma have a piece of property in her own name when she's 85 years old? It's a probate situation 100 times out of 100 when she passes. So not that you want a grandma to die, but the 85-year-old grandmothers of the world, if they don't do planning, the children are going to have probate. And part of my, my discussion with the kids of the world who have parents, a lot of the parents are Depression era parents who didn't do a lot of planning and have their money under the mattress, don't have a financial planner, and do everything themselves because there's a lack of trust. But that just causes their family to jump through some hoops that we can avoid for them at a fraction of the cost of what probate is. So I do a lot of probate work because there are a lot of I's that are not dotted and T's not crossed. But I'm happy to try to help people avoid probate if they understand that there's a way to do it at a minimal cost.
At what age do you suggest that people, a will's a hard thing to think about, right? That a will means basically I'm dying. Like, that's it. This is my will. This is what I'm leaving. This is my estate. This is the stuff that I'm leaving. Is there a certain age, or is that not right? At any age should you have a will? If you have kids and if you have a house, if you own property?
Well, I think there's a couple of definites, Rob. One is if you have children, your will is a document that names who their guardian would be until they turn of age. So you could have zero money but have children, and I would say, well, that's your biggest asset, whether you had $1 million or none, is your kids. So if you've got children, I think that's the number one reason to sit down with someone and talk about who the guardian is, who's going to raise them, who's going to manage their funds. It may not be the same person. You may have a brother or sister who's great, who your kids can go with, but you wouldn't trust them with a nickel. You don't want.
We altered ours at one time too. At some point we asked the kids, what do they want when they, you get to a certain age. So I think it changes.
I was the oldest of three, and my parents took separate planes on vacations. Now, this is many years ago, but my parents didn't have someone that they felt comfortable with to raise their star, and so they took separate planes until I turned 18. I have two younger sisters, and they felt comfortable naming me as the guardian. And that used to seem very weird to me. But the more people I've seen, the more I hear that is probably a parent's most difficult decision. Who raises my child if I'm not here? So you could have zero money, but you have children, you should have a will. We talked before about young adults who may not have money, but should have things like powers of attorney and healthcare surrogates, because those are decision-making documents. They permit someone to make financial and medical decisions for them if they're incapacitated. It has zero to do with how much money they have. The other thing is, clients will often ask me, well, how much money should I have to have a will? And to me, that's kind of a silly question, because whatever you have is your life savings. So if it's $100, $100,000, $1 million, $10 million, whatever you have at the moment you pass is what you're passing. That's your nest egg to pass to your kids or other beneficiaries. So when is it important to have these documents set up? Well, do you want it to go smoothly or cleanly? You know, grandma could have a $100,000 condo. It may not be Palm Beach or Jupiter Island, but her family is going to have to spend money to get that property out of probate if she doesn't do something as simple as maybe a deed or a deed to a trust or a deed to someone at death.
That was my question too. That was my question too. So for something like that, let's just say grandma passes away and grandma had no will, had no one's name on anything. She just didn't do it. And she passes away and you have a brother and two sisters or a brother and whoever. And now grandma's condo is there. What's the process then? How does that get worked out?
So there's a Florida statute. It's called, when you die without a will, it's called intestacy. You die intestate. An intestacy statute lists who your beneficiaries will be. And they're in order of blood. They're your spouse, they're your children, they're your parents, they're your brothers and sisters, there's cousins. And there are cases we've had in the office where some fifth cousin who the decedent never knew becomes the beneficiary of an estate simply because someone didn't do a will. And you can think of scenarios where boyfriends and girlfriends or same-sex couples have lived together forever, but didn't do planning. And now that partner is completely shut out of the estate because he or she is not on a list of blood. So, you know, before the DOMA rejection, where now same-sex couples can get married, same-sex partners were really the most at risk because if they didn't do planning, they could have lived in one of the other's house for 20 years, 30 years as a couple, but they're not on that hierarchy list of parents, kids, brothers and sisters. They're nowhere. So, you know, I joke, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, not married. Now that they lived in Florida, they would not be each other's beneficiary. So, you know, there is a statute which takes care of who the beneficiary is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the ones you would have wanted. The one you want is the one you should name in your will.
Very interesting.
All right. And Adam, if somebody would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, Jupiter Law Center, either through the website, jupiterlawcenter.com, on the phone, 744-4600. Email, you can email through info@jupiterlawcenter.com. We're open, we're answering phones. I've got assistants here. Most of my staff is still remote. And like I said before, for people who want to meet in person and kick my tires, we have an outdoor trellis that we can meet. Otherwise, we're doing things like we're doing right now, Zoom calls, conference calls. But there are people who want to see me in person and see them real, and that I have a brick and mortar location. So that's soon, because it is, like you said, it's a down to earth environment. It's sterile. It's not antiseptic.
Can we take a look at the trellis?
Yeah, I probably can walk outside with this.
Let's take a walk outside.
Do you want me to walk outside?
We do want you to walk outside. We'll get some fresh air right now. Take a look at the new office outside, the outdoor office.
You're giving me a get out of jail free card. I don't know how long my laptop will be able to work out.
But you'll see show the lobby too, because it's just a great lobby.
Did he freeze? I think he froze on us. And my dog's barking now. The mailman's here.
I had my cat up a second ago because I have a tuna fish sandwich here.
Why do dogs always bark at the mailman? The mailman always gets barked. I think Adam froze, Jeff. I think we lost Adam.
You mean they lost him?
So come back at what, 2:00 today? In a few minutes for.
Yeah, I think we should give Adam one set. We have dogs, cats, trellises, frozen screens.
Frozen
Everything's been
screens,
haywire.
I don't know.
He gone?
I think he's gone. I think he's officially gone. So,
All right. That's too
Adam,
bad.
thanks for joining us. Jeff, we'll be back at 2:00 with El Fogonacito.
I love El Fagacito.
That's it,
Fagancito. Yeah.
Great,
really good. Really good.
authentic.
Yeah, Adam's definitely gone. So
He's gone. So we'll see you guys back at 2 for some authentic Mexican food. And yeah, see you guys at 2.
okay. Goodbye, everybody.